can't wait. Probably not gonna make any philosophical breakthroughs. This is really, really obscure. Okay, yeah. So, topic I want to talk to you about today is enlightenment and non-duality. So it's a very abstract concept. There's really no intellectual consensus, and it's much um, up for debates. But I'll just try to explain my own understanding of this. Um, so non-duality is basically an overarching concept saying that dualities in all concepts are not all concepts, like depending on who you ask, but in general, dualities are illusory. So what that means is like, in order for us to understand reality, we sort of cut up reality into different categories, right? But non-duality is saying that if we truly try to dissolve these boundaries and try to figure out what exactly is the line, you won't find a very clean line. And fundamentally, reality is sort of a uniform substrate with no clear lines. So a colloquial example of this, which is unrelated to spirituality, is the gender debate. So liberals argue that gender is a spectrum because when you really try to understand what gender is, you end up blurring the lines between a man and a woman. And you might find some people who don't fit into the rigid boxes of either a man and a woman. This whole line of thinking is built upon the idea that gender is a social construct, which is quite a deep concept if you think about it, because what exactly is a social construct? A social construct is anything that doesn't inherently exist in reality, but only exists within the conceptual framework that we overlay on top of reality. The problem is if you really try to uncover the social constructs to what is true reality, you will end up with nothing because everything is ultimately a social construct, just at different levels of granularity. Let me try to explain this a little better. So let me give an example. So this computer, can you see it? Okay. Well, this phone right here, it exists, right? It's a tangible object.
All right.
It exists. But what if I take apart, let's say I take off the screen. Is it still a phone?
Yeah, it's a phone without a screen.
Okay, let's say I take off the CPU and the memory chip. Is it still a phone?
It's a broken phone.
Okay. Well, what if I take, at what point does it become a broken phone and not a phone?
At the point when I have no knowledge of it being a phone. The fact that you already told me it's a phone and you take pieces away doesn't stop being a phone. It just becomes a phone with different names onto it. It becomes a broken phone, can be a phone without a screen. You told me it's a phone. I believe you it's a phone. It doesn't stop being a phone. You melt it into a pile of goop. I was saying, yeah, okay, that was a phone. It's now a pile of goop. It's a very subjective thing.
So here's like a philosophical concept. So let's say you have a pile of sand, right? And then you have a handful of sand or something.
Mm-hmm.
Or when does it become a pile of sand? You can like take individual grains off until it becomes. When does it stop becoming a pile of sand when you take individual grains of sand off? It's like sort of like there's no boundary. There's no very clean cut boundary between an object existing and an object existing in a separate form.
Okay, I can't help but feel like this is kind of strange. Because here's the thing, right? We all have different definitions for what a pile is, but most of the constraints are size. Right? A couple of grains of salt is not a pile of salt. A little mound of salt that you spilled on the table, okay, that's a pile of salt. I think that we have different constraints for what is size. For the most part, we all estimate around the same number. A pile and words are very complicated because they can mean anything we want them to mean. I feel like you're describing that there's some greater truth to words, and that's why this non-duality matters. But I don't think words have any meaning. Every word is a social construct. We all agree socially that a word has this meaning and means something. We redefine words all the time. So everything is a social construct because we're social beings that communicate socially.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's sort of the point, which is that pretty much everything that we define is a social construct. And
Yeah.
not only that, but everything that we see is a mental construct. Everything that we believe and
I mean, everything we experience and feel is a mental construct. I would agree with you on that.
yeah, experience is a better word, but a mental construct can have different levels. So, for example, your whole life story is a mental construct.
Yeah.
So there's no inherent existence to your overarching narrative that you tell yourself. It's sort of just like your own filtering of different events, filtering of sensations to generate this
Yeah, but I would
story.
also argue there's no way we can get to an overarching narrative of ourselves. All we have are our experiences. There's not like an objective experience to be had to view ourselves. I
Mm-hmm.
think everything we view is subjective. There's no greater truth, and I think I'll bite the bullet on this. It's impossible to know the greater truth.
What do you mean by greater truth?
So the truth of the world divorced from our experiences, right? A classic example, right? If a tree snaps in a forest but no one is there to hear it, doesn't make a sound, right? We know from our understanding
Yeah.
of physics it makes a sound, but unless we're there to measure it, we can't actually be there. We can't predict all the certainty in the universe. And so we don't have that omniscience, that greater truth to predict stuff like that. Like to this day, if I asked you, is an electron a wave or a particle? Can you give me an answer?
No.
No, it's impossible. There's certain things that we can never know. That every time we try to find out, we change the answer. And that greater truth, uh, I think there are just some things, we'll call it God, call it the spiritual being, call it whatever. They're just things that we can't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, that all that is true. We can never really get to the objective world, quote unquote. But that's sort of not the point of um what non-duality is trying to get to, because it's not about knowing the objective truth. It's about trying to filter out, well, this is according to them. And I just find it a very interesting concept. I don't know if it's actually practical in any way, but um, if you filter out your mental constructs and see as clearly as you possibly can in this human form, with this human brain, then you'll reach a state where it's um, you don't feel a distance between the subject and object, in the sense that like, hmm,
I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of lost.
okay, let me explain it better. So if you look at an object, let's say you look at your hand, you feel like you're a
Observer?
you're someone sitting in the back of your head behind your eyes, right?
Okay.
And you're looking out towards your hand, right?
Okay. Sexy hands?
So, but the thing is, this experience of feeling like you are behind the head itself is a sensation that you're experiencing. And so,
Experiencing the experience of experiences.
yes, exactly. So if you experience the experiencer, then that becomes experienced as part of the objective experience. And so you basically become nothing. And I
Okay.
don't know if this is actually, but that's sort of my understanding of non-duality. It's kind of weird.
I don't get how we become nothing. I think what we end up having is the self awareness that we have that we are a being inside ourselves. That
Mhm.
there's a barrier between us and what our and our experience. That there's a processing going on. I can totally see that. I don't get how that comes into nothingness.
Well, I guess if you don't feel like you are looking out at anything, but instead there's only objective experience, objective in the sense that it's the object instead of the subject, then what are you? Then what are you? You're nothing, I guess. Or you don't really exist, because what are you then? Like, can you point out anything?
I'm not gonna lie, I'm lost again. So you're
Okay.
saying, let's say this filter is a glass,
Hmm.
right? Whether the glass exists or not doesn't change the fact that I exist and that something on the other eyes that I experience myself and something on the other side of the object. I experience some level of dissociation, and that's this glass is processing. Whether or not it's there is largely dependent on whether or not I'm focusing on it, right? Like for the most part, you're not thinking about this when I'm strangling in jujitsu.
So you're saying that in moments when we're not thinking about ourselves, then we don't exist in
Yeah,
our experience, but we still exist. You're saying that.
yeah,
So you're saying metaphysically we still exist even if you're experiencing yourself as
yeah. I think our
experience.
essence will always exist. Like our essence is obviously restricted to our experiences and our senses, but our essence is always there. So if it's always there, the idea of whether this filter being important or disqualifying of our experiences seems kind of absurd.
It is kind of absurd, to be honest. It is kind of absurd, but I think that's what makes it very interesting, there's because the fact that it's so absurd yet so fundamental, and people have experienced states where they and I don't think this is that controversial, this statement, the following statement, which is that you can, for example, view your thoughts as if they are objects rather than part of your subject. So, for example, if you're thinking right now, you feel like you are thinking, but instead you view it as you get to a state of experiencing those thoughts as if they're out in reality, just like a sound that you're hearing in the background, for example. And then let's say, I think intention is a big hard block to dissolve. So, for example, like I have the intention of talking to you right now. That feels so intimately connected to myself. It's so in my head. Like
Okay.
this intention of wanting to talk. But you can dissolve it by really paying attention to the different feelings that arise with attention. And so once you dissolve that, it becomes again like objective experience rather than you actually doing something intentionally. And so you sort of become just an experiencer behind your actions.
Daniel, I feel like I'm too sober for this conversation. I mean, I'm still trying to understand what your overarching point is. That there is this intent or this experience that's happening, and it's fundamentally interesting that we experience the experience, and we can dissociate ourselves a little from the experience, and we can comment on our own experience. It's like, for example, me in like let's say a good editing is a good example. I can edit something into this video, like a mistake that I made or a response. If I say something stupid and in the edit I can be like, oh, edit, cut. That thing that I said was stupid, wrong. I won't say it again. Right? That at least in the editing process, there's like a comment I can make on top of the experience that I was having. Right? So I feel like is that essentially the same thing? That we are like live commentators on ourselves, on our own experiences.
I think that's like one level you can achieve, which is like a slight dissociation, so you're not completely involved in your mental states or whatever.
So what's
And
the deepest level?
The deepest level is so at this level that you're talking about, so it's like some of your thoughts you can like dissociate, right? And see as an object. But the deepest level is where you keep doing that with more and more parts of your mental, your whatever's in your head, until you sort of get rid of almost everything essentially, and then you can go full circle and literally dissociate, not necessarily emotionally, but I mean, you just in terms of your sense of self, you can dissociate from almost all processes. And from anecdotal reports, it seems to be possible, though I don't know if they're just like schizophrenic, but
I mean, yeah, what you could be describing is something only attainable to someone who's neurodivergent or schizophrenic. Because at least to me,
it seems very like
I can't imagine it,
right? Yeah. So, for example,
because I'm never not in control of myself, which is why if I mess up, you have every right to blame me because I was in control of myself and I made a mistake, right?
Yeah.
So what you're essentially saying is that there's a person who can essentially dissolve their own agency.
So yeah, this is what I was gonna say. Like in his descriptions, or in multiple people's descriptions, it's like the universe is doing everything. Like even if you're cooking or something or writing, the universe is doing. It feels like the universe has a massive momentum behind you.
I'm going to push back on that a lot because there's so many parts of the mind that we do not understand. We don't understand deeper emotions. Why is it that there are cases of women who are able to move cars in order to rescue their child, something that they don't have the physicality to do normally? Why is it that when women are pregnant, they have a primal urge to protect their child, do things for their child that's on an instinctual level? Parents can blot out the sound of a heavy cross-country rail going at it, but the moment their child even coos, they're immediately on it. We have selective perceptions, but a lot of it is primal, driven beyond our understanding, and our understanding of the mind is so shallow. It's hard to say that we have like the universe pushing us forward when it could be there are deeper processes ingrained into us that are pushing us forward.
No, of course. Like that's sort of the point, which is that even these primal processes, which are in your brain, if you that doesn't mean that those primal processes are your actions. So, for example, like if somehow I implanted a chip in your brain and literally turned off your self-awareness and you started murdering people and I took it out, like is that your decision? It's still mediated. Or let's say like I changed the chemicals in your brain like magically. Like that doesn't, just because it's in your brain and through primal processes doesn't mean that experientially it's your doing. So like
Mm.
the universe includes you, like you're part of the universe, and like you're connected with the universe, right? So like when they say universe is doing your action, it's just saying that you're not attached to any of these processes and claim that they're you, and instead it just feels like it's happening.
Um, I don't know, because obviously someone's hacking into your brain or drugging you. There's an outside force that's controlling you that we know. If we dissociate ourselves and we go off of primal instinct, I mean, so long as we have the ability to suppress that instinct, it's hard to say that you're no longer in control of yourself, right? Because let's say I have been lonely for a very long time, which unfortunately I have, and I constantly just keep thinking about sex and thinking about women. Every time I look at a woman, I'm just thinking, oh my god, there are like 15 different ways we can have sex right now. How do I make this happen? Obviously, that's a primal urge. It's happening.
To the women watching, you'll know.
Yeah, you'll know. No, but it's obviously a primal urge, but I don't act on it.
Okay.
So obviously, I have some control to suppress that deeper motion. So if you're saying that I have no agency, I don't even have the ability to suppress things around me. You're effectively describing a person who has no control over themselves. It's literally all id. That's the only
Oh,
way I
okay.
can think of
I
it.
see what you're saying. Um, but that's not necessarily true. So, for example, there are some drugs which cause you amnesia, right? Like you don't remember what happens.
Hmm.
I forgot what it's called. Well, I've heard stories on like Joe Rogan where this person literally took this drug and went on a date with someone. It's like they managed to like drive to the date, they managed to have a conversation and order food, and came back and forgot all of it. Like the guy texted her like, "Oh, that was such a nice date. I want to go on another one with you." And she's like, "What date?" So that's sort of like
Please tell me what that drug is and make sure I never take it. That sounds terrifying.
yeah, but oh, wait, I think I remembered it. What is it? Shit, just forgot. Okay, come back to that later. But anyway, so it's not the case that just because you don't have a sense of agency that you'll become like a animal, a lizard who literally is going to do whatever. Because uh, I guess it's theoretically possible. I don't know if it's actually possible based on our neurology, but it's theoretically possible to not have a sense of agency, but still have the parts of our brain that control the primal parts of the brain still online. It's not necessarily mutually exclusive. Like imagine having a very intellectual conversation and
So the opposite of what we've been doing.
yes, basically, while not feeling like you're actually doing it.
Again, the only way that I can imagine this is if I was somehow neurodivergent, or if I had complete loss of agency. I consciously I can't experience that because I've never experienced that.
Yeah.
I can't really understand that.
So that's like my main question, which is like, is this number one? Is this even achievable? Right? It seems outlandish. It seems impossible to achieve. This, I mean, like it seems so fundamental to have a sense of agency, right? And to see ourselves as independent of nature and independent of the rest of the world. But people have claimed at least to achieve those states, and I really wonder if that's possible. And if it is possible, like
I feel like if you
are there
brainwash people, you can get them into a similar state.
maybe
And at this point, I view this as one of the greatest immoral things in the world. You cannot take away people's agency.
of course.
This is awful. This sounds like a nightmare. Daniel, please make sure this is never possible. It should
I
not
think
be
it's
possible.
fundamentally different from what you're saying because you can still have the freedom to do what you want without agency. Because agency is just, I guess,
Agency is,
just
is
this.
controlling your actions. Is being accountable for your
Okay,
actions, controlling your actions.
well, what is the difference between? Okay, this is just going reductivist as fuck, but what is the difference between having a sense of agency and you unconsciously doing it, and you doing it without the sense of agency? So, for example, like the whole free will argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like the universe is okay, I can't even explain the free will argument. You probably know what I'm talking about. You guys probably
Yeah,
know
yeah.
what
So
I'm
is
talking about, right?
everything predetermined? Because if everything is directly causally linked, there's no such thing as free will because our environments are affecting us, and so our if we have an ability to calculate all variables and create a model, we could predict all of the future.
Well,
And
I
we
was
never
gonna say
deviate.
like even if it's not deterministic, it still doesn't prove free will because that would mean that I mean it's just logically incoherent because then you have to cause your own actions, which the intention has to be caused by yourself too. So it can't go both ways. It doesn't make any sense. But anyway, um, there's really no difference between something happening and you doing that from like a fundamental level.
I disagree. So for example, if you scare me
Hmm.
and I punch you in the face, that's reflexes, right? That's something that I've conditioned to my body. Now, whether or not conditioning that was something I made a choice to, that's something that's happening independent of my immediate cognizance, independent of me thinking about it. I punch you. I can't really be blamed because my intent was not to punch you. You scared me,
Hmm.
right? You could blame me for creating that system or ingraining to myself, okay, protect yourself when you're scared. You could argue that it's bad. I would tend to disagree. But that is me conditioning myself so that I lose agency temporarily for the benefit of quicker reaction. Reflexes. I mean, at the end of the day, I still have the ability to suppress those or retrain myself.
But what if you act normally and you
Mhm.
act as if you normally do? Like, let's say you right now don't have agency. Like, is that a problem? Or you don't have the sense of agency, but you're doing exactly what you would have done without sense of agency, or close to that. It's not
Wait,
like
so
you
that
become like
means
a.
like I'm in a trance where I'm going on autopilot. That sounds terrifying.
Not really. I think that's not necessarily negative because have you ever been like in a flow state where you feel effortless in the sense that you don't feel like you're doing it? Like at least okay, I can't talk about this.
The way I describe the flow state to anyone is that there is no lag between my intent and my action. That's how I think of the flow state. I think that I wish to do this and I'm able to do it. Whether that's when I'm writing, whether when that's rolling in jujitsu, whether that's me playing the guitar. I mean, the guitar one is very rare, but sometimes I just feel okay. I want to end this on if I'm like improving. I say I want to end this chord. I want to resolve this chord in a cool way, and then I just automatically get there. Like I made the intent and it was there. Everything went smoothly. I consider that a flow state.
I agree, but I think flow state is not completely agent free, right? I mean,
It is the
there's no
it is the
there's a slight sense of
it
agency.
is the maximization of agency.
Really?
That is how I view the flow state, where there is a one-to-one between my thoughts and my actions, my intent and my outcome. There is one-to-one. Everything just flows. There's no hesitation. There's no lag. The so-called mirror, this mirror that we're looking through, this screen of processing, gone, divorced from me. It is a maximization of my agency and of my humanity. That
But
is
I
how I
think
view it.
but I think that's actually exactly the same thing as having no agency. I think they're like two sides of the same coin. They're like you reach so much intention and agency that where like every agency instantaneously results in a change in your environment exactly how you want it to be is the same thing as having no sense of effort and no sense of agency where like
Wait, wait.
everything is happening
So I can understand the no sense of effort. I don't understand the no sense of agency.
because I think the sense of effort is pretty it's like a it amplifies the sense of agency a lot because okay let's say like you're lifting weights like oh like you feel so much sense of agency right that's so much sense of agency because
But then
you
if the
have to
bar feels like
concentrate
a feather,
or like let's say you're in a dream or something and you're lifting weights like I don't really I just think if everything happened to you and all your surroundings matched instantaneously as if you I'm not phrasing this right but everything in your environment changes one to one with what you want it to
mm-hmm.
be that would almost feel like the universe is doing it.
No. Because if the universe wants something else, you say, I don't know, my opponent wants to strangle me, and I immediately say, think no, and it doesn't happen. That is me going against the will of the universe.
No, because if he actually stopped strangling you as he thought, you'd become the universe. You'd be omni.
Yeah, but he didn't
Okay.
strangle me not because he stopped, but because I made sure he didn't. The power's still in me. So long as the power exists in me, I have
But
agency.
because it's so effortless, it because it's so effortless and it just happens almost with the mere thought of it, then the effort is sort of like, okay, thank God, you like God literally just did this for me, aka the universe just did this for me, whatever you want to call it. Like a lot of artists, they say sort of the same thing. Oh, they say that when they're creating masterpieces, they don't feel like they're doing it. They feel like God is gracing them with this inspiration and writing it for them.
I mean,
And
artists are kind of
that's,
full of shit sometimes. I'm gonna say that out there. But even
but I
then,
actually relate with that experience. I mean, not like that much, but sometimes I get this flow state where it really does feel to a certain extent, not that much, but I get where they're where they're coming from. This universe doing
I don't get you at all.
it. Okay.
I do not. I and if there was a drug that made me see the world your way, hell no, I'm not taking it. I am in control of myself. I never want to not be in control of myself. I got drunk once in my life. It was an interesting experience. I'm never going to do it again. And that's just the way I view it. I view it as an irreconcilable difference, I guess, between you and me. I just cannot understand that world.
So it's very interesting because one of the people who described this experience, he still lifts weights, but he describes it as if the effort that I'm using is the effort of the universe.
Did he get stronger?
He actually, I mean, he's really strong. He
But
is,
did he get stronger?
well, he's like older now, but like he still looks really jacked. Pretty sure he's like almost as strong as he was in his prime.
Yeah, so
But
I think there's a difference. Facts over feelings, if the weight actually increased, okay, there might be some truth to that. Weight didn't actually increase, it was just a feeling. Okay, that's you volunteering away your agency. That's you volunteering away your control for no benefit. I don't see it.
okay.
I'll go even further. To everyone in the audience, do not listen to Daniel. Listen to me instead. Your life will be better if you do.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I actually agree with that because I don't think you should take this at all as a practical philosophy for life. I think it's actually, I think unless you are serious about pursuing non-duality or enlightenment and treat that as a separate or have a really dedicated practice for it, you might fall into this trap, which is that you sort of intellectualize non-duality and use it as an excuse. So, for example, like let's say you did something bad, right? You'd be like, "Ah, it's the fucking universe," something like that. Like,
Yeah.
you can intellectualize things that are antithetical to your pursuits and being a good person.
It's called being delusional.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm
So-
generally against delusion. People have agency. You are responsible for your own actions. Make good decisions.
Yeah. So this is actually like, at least in Buddhism, they call it the two truth doctrine, which is saying that like, okay, there's this fundamental truth that you're like trying to realize, but at the same time, in your practical life, you should follow like the values of society, such as AK, which is sort of based on agency.
Yeah, I think
Mhm.
I never understood Buddhism, so it would be kind of weird for me to say this, but I reject all of Buddhism.
Really?
I mean, ultimately, there's nothing I get from Buddhism that changes anything that I'm going to do. I've not gained a new perspective.
I think it has some really profound insights, though it's so hard to implement or even because a lot of the insights are like I said, counter effective to
The
practical
utility of
life.
an insight is almost always greater than the profoundness of the insight. That's why I would say it. So Buddhism has nothing for me.
I guess you're not a philosopher.
No.
See, the thing is, I find some of these insights interesting, like on its own, even if it's not practical.
So
think
I like
it's-
art in terms of philosophy. I like looking at art. I love looking at politics. But at the end of the day, if I don't get something out of something, I don't really care about it. I get nothing from the teachings of the Buddha, other than like what not to do to be a good dad. Like he was a terrible dad.
Mm.
That's what I get from him.
I really want to do a silent meditation retreat because people come out of it with a very different headspace.
So I actually,
Temporarily.
one of my old yoga teachers, he went to a yoga retreat, and in it he took a vow of silence, and he almost quit after the first few days. But he made it through the entire week, and he said that changed his entire life.
How to change it?
He said that he felt more in control of himself. He felt happier. A lot of his neuroticism and worrying of the future went away, and he felt, despite not talking to anyone around him, he felt more connected with people around him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there might be some truth to that. I kind of want to try it one day.
Yeah. So I think that sort of goes back to this concept of like the mental constructions because when you're on the silent retreat, at least when you're meditating, which is what you do the whole time at silent retreat, you're sort of, disassociating and objectifying your thoughts. So they become less delusional or able to delude you.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're able to see reality slightly clearer. And that gets rid of so many neuroticisms. So yeah, that I guess maybe that convinces you a little bit about the utility of these ideas.
Possibly. Again, right, I'm open to being proven wrong. I don't know everything. I'm kind of an idiot sometimes. If this ends up being beneficial, I will agree with you. But at least the way that you've explained it to me, don't really see a lot of utility in this. And what I can see is just a lot of people being delusional and excusing their own failings. I feel like a lot of spirituality ends up becoming a bludgeon to escape your responsibilities.
Yeah, I agree. The thing
So
is, I took a view of this from a more deep level in the sense that like that's like the end goal. But on the way, there are many more practical uses for this. Which like your yoga
maybe,
teacher explained.
maybe. Again, I would love to dig deeper into this in the future, but I think unless you give me some hard-backed scientific studies, it's going to be very difficult for me.
Oh, the scientific studies are actually really strong on this.
Then why didn't you lead with that?
Because this is like more like I was trying to be like philosophical and delve into the fundamentals of this philosophy, but from practical, I could do one on practical.
Do that next time.
Yeah.
All right. So now that we're not talking, now that we went